Dear students, welcome once again to my channel. See the very topic written by me, voice and class 1, and it tells us there will be several classes relating to this very grammatical chapter voice. So at first we must know the definition of voice, what is a voice, and there will be some general rules. Actually, in my today's class, from changing active to passive, and the definition of active voice and passive voice. So don't be late. So let's start. Voice tells us if the subject is the doer of the action in a sentence or the receiver of the action. That's when, based on the very definition, we may divide voice into two categories. The very first one, active voice, and the second one is passive voice. Active voice and passive voice. Active voice always tells us how the subject works actively in a sentence, or in another sense we can tell that subject becomes the doer in the sentence. For example, Ram is doing the work. See it. Ram is doing the work. Ram here is the subject, is auxiliary verb, and doing is the main verb. The work is the object. In this very sentence, Ram becomes the doer in the sentence, and he is active, or he remains the main part of the sentence, just doing the work. So it's an active voice. Just like this, we are running a race. We here is the subject, and we is the actually the very subject. We is the doer in the sentence. In the sentence. See the number 3. Lata hates me. Lata hates me. Lata is subject here. Hates, there is a verb, me object. Lata is active, or Lata is the doer, actual doer. Actually, she does the work. We love India. We is the doer. So, all these very 4 sentences are in active voice. How? Because all the subject in the sentences are doers in the several sentences or in the sentences. That's when active voice is clear. Passive voice, in passive voice, the passive voice tells us, what does it tell us? How the subject becomes a receiver of an action. How the subject becomes a receiver of an action. That's when there will be an action and the subject becomes receiver of the action. It's clear in the sense that subject always remains passive in passive voices. Yes, it's right. See the very example. I am hated by Raju. Suppose I am directed to write the sentence into a active one, then I may write in this way. Raju hates me. Raju hates me. See the very differences or between the two sentences. I am hated by Raju and Raju hates me. Both the two sentences are giving the same meanings, but based on different structures. I am hated by Raju. In this very first sentence, Raju is the receiver of the action. Receiver of the action. But here, Raju hates me. Here, Raju is the doer. So, it's active. And the very second sentence is passive, as Raju is the receiver of the action here. RECEIVER, receiver of the action. In the same way, In the same way, India is loved by us. India is loved by us. Here, us, us is the receiver of the action, and it's also an example. It's also an example of a passive voice. Okay, the rat is killed by the cat. The rat is killed by the cat. Here, the cat is the receiver of the action. Suppose I am directed to write the sentence into an active one, and then I will write in this way: the rat, the cat kills the rat. Here the cat becomes the dwarf, actually to kill the cat. To kill the rat. And is killed, it is given in passive voice how? By the cat, because it is receiver. So the sentence is in passive voice. Remember, only transitive verbs have active and passive voice. Actually, the very examples what I have already discussed regarding active voices and passive voices, you see that all the sentences have verbs and verbs with object. Transitive verbs are those. What are transitive verbs? Actually, transitive verbs are those which have objects. For example, we love our parents. Here, we is the subject, love verb, and our parents is the object, and love is the transitive verb. Transitive verb. That means transitive verbs always has object. Always has object. But on the other hand, intransitive verb have no object. For example, Roman smiles. Roman smiles. There is no object. Roman smiles. So remember, only transitive verbs have active and passive voices. Generally, rules. There are some general rules from changing active to passive. The very first one is the object in the active voice becomes the subject in the passive voice, and it is placed to start the sentence. Actually, just to start the passive voice, we have to start using the very object of the active voice into a passive by making it subject, and it is always placed in the beginning of the sentence. It's clear. We have to use the proper auxiliary verb in the passive based on tenses, numbers, and person, and it's very important. This is very important to remember. Yes, actually, according to different tenses, we have to use different auxiliary verbs. Okay, and we have to depend on numbers and persons also. Next one, always use the third form of the verb in the passive. It's a common rule, and you always remember that you have to use the third form of the verb in the passive. The subject in the active becomes the object in the passive voice, and it is generally preceded by. Actually, see some examples, then it will be clear. According to the very rules or the very conditions, rules actually, what I have already said above. Muhua wrote the letter. Okay, see here. Subject. Wrote, it is the verb form. The letter, its object. At first, you have to know is the sentence is given active or passive. Say Mohua wrote the letter. Mohua subject. Actually, Mohua becomes a doer. Okay, there is a transitive verb. There is an object. That's when the very sentence is in active voice, and it's very clear. And we have to change based on the rules. The object becomes subject. That's when the letter. and it's very important if the sentence yes, it's right, the sentence is in active voice, and you have to recognize or you have to understand in which tense is the sentence is used. Mohua wrote the letter, it's past indefinite. That's when tense is very important to learn voice also. The letter, if the sentence is given past indefinite, then we have to use was or were as auxiliary verb in the passive. Okay. Then the letter, after the letter we have to use was. The letter was, write, wrote, written, written. Because we have to use the third form in the passive always. The letter was written, then there will be an by according to the rules. By Mohua. Actually, name or nouns nouns remain unchanged in the passive, though there are several changes regarding pronoun. Next, I hate him. See this. I is the subject, hate is the verb, him is the object. Then him becomes he in the active. As hates, or it becomes the subject here. See the tense, I hate him. It's present indefinite. Present indefinite. In case of present indefinite, we have to use am, is, are, based on number and persons also. Then he is hated by me. Okay, I becomes me. There are some changes I have already said regarding pronouns. I become me, he become him. In my next classes, all these will be discussed. Okay. See the next one. Students hated home task. Students, subject, hated, verb, verb second, past indefinite tense, and home task object. Then home task was hated. Why was there? Because it is already discussed here. In case of past indefinite tense, we have to use was or were. See here, was or were. Home task. Home task was hated by students. See the next one. Mr. Das was teaching English. Then Mr. Das, subject, was auxiliary verb, and teaching verb ing, that's the main verb here. And was teaching tells us the very sentence is in past continuous tense and English is subject here. If the sentence is given in past continuous, then we have to use was being, or were being, based on subject, based on tense also. Tense, the very tenses is past continuous tense based on number and persons. Then English will be subject here. Then English was being. After English, there will be was being. Third form of the verb, teaching, teach, taught. English was being taught by Mr. Das. So, the very class regarding voice, definition of voice, two kinds of voice, and some general rules. And to get more videos regarding the very chapter, you may subscribe the very channel English Academy Debashis Sanyal. And in my next classes, uses of auxiliary verbs, actually I will discuss all the structures of the auxiliary verbs in the different tenses in my next classes. Thank you for watching.